Dr. Rob McKenna, and welcome to the WiLD Conversation, where we make the best thinking in psychology, leadership, and organizational science accessible to leaders who are willing to learn and edit for their sake and for the sake of others. And today we are continuing our series on building a great team. And the topic today is who belongs on your team. Who belongs on your team? And so how do we start a conversation like this without a little Thomas Merton? We have to start with little Thomas Merton. Is where we're going. We're going to get a little deep right now. He said this, but certain ones, very few, are our close friends. Because we have more in common with them, we are able to love them with a special selfless perfection, since we have more to share. They are inseparable from our own destiny. That's what Thomas Merton said. And I'm not sure Thomas, can I call him Thomas? I don't know, knew how right he was in making that statement. And I think you could replace friends with team members very easily. Certain team members belong on our team because we have more in common with them and are able to serve them with a special selfless perfection. And that is not to say that they don't bring tremendous diversity and difference from us in our experience, but we will have so much in common, especially when we begin to share just a sampling of our life and work experience with each other. So let's talk about this thing, belonging. We used to have this saying that, I don't know, maybe we still use it, that we use when we would talk about fitness clubs or gyms, right? What gym do you belong to? That was a thing at one time. Wow, what an interesting statement. We actually feel comfortable saying we belong to a gym. Who belongs on your team? Let's think about this for a second. Who belongs on your team? Who are the people who are suitable for your team, advantageous for your team, and who are appropriately a match with the identity, purpose, and direction of your team? Who fits and makes the team better because they are a part of it? That's a really important set of questions, but there are also other questions that matter. Who feels like they fit on your team and feels a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves, giving themselves to the work in a courageous and sacrificial way? And I think those questions are equally important. Who belongs on your team, and how do you know if they feel like they belong and they actually belong? So we got to talk about this. Like, what does it mean to belong? And belonging has at least two meanings. One meaning is a sense of ownership or possession, and the other has to do with acceptance as a natural part of something, and something we possess and own, and something we fit into. And while it is certainly appropriate to think of something as belonging to us or something we possess, it's not really appropriate oftentimes to think of humans that way, until we think of it as a mutual possession of something we value. And if I claim you as mine from a completely selfish perspective, that's a little gross, right? It's just a little bit gross. But if I claim you as mine and me as yours from a human perspective, there's something more interesting to consider. If I value something that is mine, I will treat it well and not mistreat it. And relationally, taking responsible ownership of something or someone, you belong to me and I belong to you, creates an entirely different perspective on what belonging is all about. The second part of the definition of belonging is also important because it calls out the reality that belonging also means to fit as a natural and seamless part of something. To belong on a team means that we may not fit everywhere, but all of us fit somewhere. And to belong on a team is to fit well and to take responsible ownership of our place on that team. And as a leader, to do the same, to see the appropriate and necessary fit for individuals on our teams and to take responsible ownership of each individual's place on our team as well as our own. So I come back to this question. I know it's a lot of depth in that. There's lots of process in that. Who belongs on your team? And it's interesting, right? Creating a culture of belonging on our teams is a process of both seeing people more clearly and helping them see each other and themselves more clearly. And that's really what the spirit of what WiLD Leaders is all about for teams. And it's the purpose behind the whole and intentional leader development system we built. And before I provide some actionable and practical steps, because I know some of you really appreciate that. Let's get practical, McKenna. Here are a few important things to consider, I think, regarding belonging. And there's a few of them. So I gotta say some of these things. Our job is not to make sure everyone belongs everywhere. We must all belong somewhere. I think that's the simple truth. The whole truth is that not everyone belongs everywhere. If we just start to define our organizational responsibility as making sure everyone belongs on our team all the time, we miss out on the reality that not everyone belongs on our team. However, once we bring them onto the team, if we believe that each team member as a human being has inherent value, we can no longer dismiss the reality that our job is to invite them to see the way that they either belong now or may belong in the future, or quite possibly may not belong in the future. This highlights two other related and important realities that I got to touch on, is that selection for our teams is really important. Like highlighting the importance of really knowing ourselves, knowing our team and our mission. And once we build our teams, our job becomes more about knowing the players on our teams and providing the resources to help them know themselves. Another thing to consider before we even get practical is belonging is an outcome, not an input. Let me say that again. Belonging is an outcome, something we're seeking. It's not an input. Belonging isn't something we prescribe because we can't tell someone to belong, but we can invite them to come and see if they do or how they do. Just like trust, engagement, psychological safety, or even performance, belonging is an outcome that takes time, investment, and courage to offer as a potential thing down the road. I am really weary of people instructing leaders and organizations to shoot for trust, safety, and belonging without offering them a realistic way to actually achieve those outcomes. None of these things, belonging included, just happen. Belonging is figured out over time as we see our team members more effectively and invite them to see themselves more clearly as part of our teams, which is the next thing, that belonging changes with time. Like, while my aspiration is that more of us will create teams and communities that will last for a lifetime, it doesn't always happen that way. I was a professor to what's now, because I'm old enough to say this, hundreds of graduate students over the years. And my hope is that they might know that I will always claim them as my own. They were entrusted to me for a season of their lives. And over that period, I felt responsible that I lived out imperfectly as I invested in them, but I will always claim them as my own. And while many of them remain in touch with me, many haven't, and that's okay. I remind myself of that our sense of belonging changes over time. And in some seasons, we belong more closely to teams we work on, and others we're less connected. And I think while it's a shame that great team members move on from our actual teams, in a larger sense, the best ones with the greatest fit are always part of our team, even if we don't see them for a while. And discerning who belongs on our teams and inviting them well requires honest and difficult conversations of love and truth, because humans are dynamic and changing, and belonging changes with time. I may belong here today, but I may not tomorrow. Here's another thing to think about. You can't believe I'm not getting practical yet, and I promise I will. Belonging is a purposeful sense of fit and ease and mutual sacrificial benefit. When someone belongs on our team, they fit for a multitude of reasons. They bring the skills the team needs, or they will develop them. They will feel a sense of being a part of something that is bigger than them, but includes them. They'll receive a deeper sense of meaning being a part of our team, and at the same time will provide that same sense of meaning to others. They will fit us and we will fit them. Another thing to think about, it's not something we deserve, but something we must have somewhere. Belonging is not something we deserve, but something we must have somewhere. We don't simply deserve it, we must have it. So the next question is figuring out where I belong and who belongs with us. And here's the other kind of related to that, is that belonging is both my responsibility as an individual and the responsibility of my team and leaders. This is the great paradox of belonging. If someone doesn't feel like they belong on our team, it may be impossible for us to change their mind. But that still doesn't let us off the hook for inviting team members and potential hires to consider and discern whether or not they belong. If we default to putting all the responsibility on an organization to make us feel like we belong, that organization will always fail us because in reality, it can't. But if we only put the responsibility on the individual team member to fit in, we are walking just as blindly and creating a culture that is rooted in fear and approval seeking, producing behaviors that will be damaging to everyone in the long and short terms. And I think this is the point, that discerning who belongs on our teams is both something I must step toward as an individual and something that a team and a leader must invite. And this is kind of this last big picture is creating a culture of belonging takes courage. I think this takes a lot of guts. Because I know all of us have been on both sides of this equation, just like all the other powerful touchy-feely outcomes we're seeking: trust, safety, acceptance, health and wellness. Belonging takes guts. It requires leaders who are willing to change and learn and see their team members better, and team members who will take the risk to be seen. Belonging takes the courage on everyone's part, and I think it's necessary courage. So let's get practical. I want to give you 8 necessary steps in the form of questions that will help you know who belongs on your team, as well as help you invite them to discern it all for themselves. And these steps are not only important to satisfy the emotional need behind belonging, but necessary to create teams that perform, that adapt, that grow, and deepen their connection together. And the beauty of these steps is that it can start now. And the first 4 things, the first 4 questions are things we need to answer as leaders in order to have a fighting chance of building a team where each person belongs on the team and feels it. And then the last part of these questions are things to know about each of your team members as key players. So here we go. Does that make sense? So we're going to start with those. What do we need to know? Because we have to set that frame. We don't just start to get people to belong or invite them. Where do we begin? The first thing is this: who are you? Most leaders and managers, even those in large corporations, dismiss away the reality that as a leader, it is necessary to know yourself. If we don't start by knowing ourselves, we walk blindly, and we are asking others to join our teams blindly. Knowing ourselves, how you lead, considering what you may need to sacrifice, and knowing what you need to learn is the start. But it also includes knowing what you want, the things that are less likely to change about you, and what is changing in you. It has to start with making that implicit awareness explicit, putting it out there. People can't belong to something well if they don't know who is leading them. Which leads to the second question: where are you going? This is a hard one for all of you who run your own business. It's impossible for people to belong, let alone be inspired, to a direction that isn't defined and clear. And it doesn't mean you have to make it all about the destination or goal, because destinations and goals will always change. But a clear statement of the mission we are on and the metrics that will help us know if we're getting there is crucial. It's hard to belong to an unclear mission. Where are you going, and what do you hope to achieve? Number 3, what is your purpose? It's not enough to know where you're going. It's also necessary to know why you're going there. At a time in history where most people have become aware that they're looking for a selfless and meaningful purpose that is bigger than them, building a team that belongs must start with a purpose that pulls. Why are you in it? Why are you building the product you're building? Who will it serve? I think starting by asking that is important. And then the last one that focused on us is this: what do you need? Part of knowing yourself and your organization is knowing what it is that you need to be successful, to grow, to deepen, and to move forward. And what resources do you need? What jobs must be done well to achieve the mission? What can you not do well without great help and great team members? What kind of support do you need? Do you need skills, knowledge, or wisdom right now? What's the mix of skills you need on your team? All these questions are necessary to answer to build a team of people who belong on your team. So here we go. Let's talk about them. What does each team member want? What experiences do they want? What is the purpose behind their work, and how does their purpose connect to the mission of the team? When we begin to see what our team members are looking for, we can begin to discern together the interaction between the needs of the team and their individual desires. And both may need to be edited and changed. but it starts by knowing what they want. It's not all about what they want, as the needs of the team and your organization matter greatly, but their desires are there as well and deserve to be discovered. And it's okay if they discover that what they want is different than what the team needs, because they may belong somewhere else. Number 6, what are they good at doing? Isn't this weird? Like, to think about, do we have to think about, like, that skills matter for belonging? Like, knowing who belongs on our team is intimately connected to the skills each team member brings or could learn along the way. What knowledge do they bring? What practical and hardcore skills and competencies do they bring that will elevate the team to a new level? And discovering skills is easy once you invite team members to see them. The right team members will belong because of the knowledge and skill they bring, as well as who they are. Number 7, what do they need? What do they need? Belonging is a process as much as an end state. Knowing who belongs on our team is about knowing them and honest conversations about what they need from us as leaders, as well as what they may need to change in order to belong on the team even better and more. And part of knowing what they need is about what they need from you. But it's also what they need from each other, the resources and structure they need to be successful, and the way they are motivated to learn and adapt, which leads me to number 8. How do they play together? How do they play together? We're talking about a team. Belonging, this one kind of kills me because it's so interesting. We don't talk about this that often. Belonging is not something we do in a vacuum, but something we do together. It's one thing to know each individual team member and to see them more effectively, but it's equally important to know how they play together. When team members begin to share their skills, experiences, desires, and vulnerabilities, it gives them the relational structure and trust necessary to not only see how they belong, but who they belong to. Belonging on a team is a courageous invitation to see one another and ourselves more clearly, and to begin the work of seeing how and if we belong and where that might be happening. I'm excited for this conversation, so let's just keep it going.